Remember, the 5th of October. It's World Teachers' Day, a day on which teachers around the world are celebrated. Listen, none of us would be anything without the teachers who saw something in us, right? Some spark they ignited into a fire that propels us to this day. But in South Africa, of course, it is a bittersweet celebration because many of our schools are under siege following several violent incidents this year. I mean, listen to this. A principal was shot and killed at a school in Pietermaritzburg, while in a separate incident, a learner allegedly set a teacher's car on fire. Last year, the Basic Education Department released figures that 91,000 learners fell pregnant. More than 600 schools were affected by torrential rains, that devastation of the floods in KZN in April, and we still haven't eradicated the bucket system, quite apart from some schools that still use open-air ablutions. Minister Angie Motshekga joins us now on the line, the Minister of Basic Education. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get into anything else, Minister, I would want you to know that we on this show in particular have been champions of teachers throughout the year. We're running a Teacher of the Year campaign because we want to recognize teachers. People nominate teachers from their school communities, and hopefully you'll be able to join us when we have our year-end function for the Teacher of the Year campaign.
No, thank you very much for having me, Bongani, but also thank you for running the campaign on teachers, because indeed the system rests and falls on the shoulders of teachers. So we really need to give it to them, acknowledge them, and give them all the support.
Minister, although it is World Teachers' Day, one could say there's not a lot worth celebrating because so many of our teachers, particularly in our public schooling system, work under severe strain.
That's the reason we have to celebrate, because if it was not of them coming forward under those severe conditions, we will be nothing. So, and that's why we have to celebrate them, we have to acknowledge them, because indeed, all the other difficulties that you raise, that they're the ones who have to face up with children, step each other who really do all sorts of difficult situations. They have to work in environments that we're not very proud of, and they continue to carry the baton for us. And that's why we have to pause and say, indeed, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing for the nation. So that's why we have to celebrate them.
You've been at the helm of the department since 2009. Would you concede that progress has been painfully slow? Because we know, of course, there are still far too many schools with pit toilets. There's still too many overcrowded classrooms, buildings that are falling apart. Would you say that in your 13 years, progress has been painfully slow?
Major progress, Bongan. You see, if you think education, you can flip it upside down, you're going to have lots of problems. Education is a very slow process because you have to get your systems in place, you have to get it embedded, and be sure to say, as I can confidently say, the system has stabilized, we have less of even uprisings in the system, the curriculum is well understood. So the major things in the system are embedded. We are at a stage where we're able to provide adequate resources to our schools, but proud, and as South Africa have to be proud. We don't leave any child behind. So any child who wants access to education, we do all we can to bring them in schools. Indeed, as you correctly say, we still have schools with pit latrines, and it never said that we've completed them. Of the 3,200 and something schools that we had counted who had pit latrines, more than 2,000 have received them. And between this year and the end of the year, we will finish the 900 that is remaining. So if there were 3,000, we have done 2,000. It means indeed there are still some schools that still have pit latrines. It is a process, and we are given budgets 3 years, but there's also capacity to, both financial and in terms of human resources, to implement some of the programs. But Bongani, without doubt, anybody who's been to our schools will tell you that it's a completely new world. It's exciting. Some of the people still assess schools in terms of their last classrooms. They've not been to our schools recently. And some of the comments, you can see that they don't even have children in the system. So they're still assessing the system in terms of what they hear and in what they know, not in what are the facts on the ground.
Minister, you are a former teacher yourself. What do you think has gone wrong in our society when a principal or a teacher can be shot dead on the school premises, when children set a teacher's car alight?
It's quite sad, boy. But schools are a microcosm of what is happening in society. If you have a society in which there are high levels of rape, you should know that there are going to be high levels of sexual abuse. If there's these high levels of violence that we see in society, because kids, in Malawi, they walk like their parents, they speak like their parents. That's why a child who's born in South Africa will speak South African English, who's born in America will speak differently. So if ourselves in society still don't see it as a responsibility, that raising a child is a very important and sensible responsibility, the schools are going to find themselves confronted with a number of things. I heard you also mention the child of teenage pregnancy. And again, to put it only on the shoulders of schools, it's a problem. It's a societal problem.
Yeah.
Because these kids are molested at home, they're violated at home. So all of us, as adults and parents, have a responsibility of doing our part. But if, as the elite of Gauteng says, if parents pass a line and do other things, it's going to be difficult to maintain a very disciplined cohort of learners. So it's our responsibility, all of us in South Africa. And these schools are a reflection of who we are as a society, not what the schools are in general.
91,000. I still can't get over that number, Minister. Let's talk now about the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, the Bella Bill. Some necessary clarity on a number of things it provides: the age of starting school, mandatory attendance, punishing those who prevent it more harshly. But it's not without some controversy. The language policy has been particularly contentious.
Yeah, well, that is a reflection of where we come from, where in terms of languages we found ourselves divided as society. So that there are schools which are in communities which were predominantly a certain language. But if you are going to allow those communities to continue to admit kids on the basis of language, we are blocking out other kids who have moved into those areas, but we are also blocking other kids who need to have access in those schools. If we have an overcrowded area and then the school says we are only speaking schools, which means everybody else who needs to have access to the school cannot be admitted in the school. So we have to change policies that continue to discriminate against others, but continue to perpetuate the past. So the language policy, I think every South African has to understand it in the context of our history.
Aren't you, though, denuding school governing bodies of their power?
No, but the powers of school governing bodies can be beyond the powers of the Constitution. The Constitution says every child has the right to access education. That's what guides us. And everything else has to fit within that. So school governing bodies can't have powers which are beyond the Constitution. We have, as a department, have to ensure that we ensure access to education for every child who qualifies, and then everything comes after.
Your critics will say part of this is because of your failure to build schools, at least make sure that the education that is available is of the quality of the schools whose language policies you are now changing because you couldn't build your own.
No, don't even those schools that you call not that belong to other people. They're still state schools. So there is no point in saying we fail to build our own schools. Those are government schools. We don't go to private schools and change their language policies. Those are government schools to which kids, every other South African child has the right to access. So it's not anybody's school, private schools. Those are government schools.
Why do you want to do away with infrastructure deadlines that you've committed to in the past?
Not do away, amend, because we also have to be realistic. Some of the difficulties in what we would have promulgated, now in trying to implement them, we can see that it's not working. For instance, take the Eastern Cape, where we have to really close some of the schools. Closing schools takes a whole process, and we've experienced it. So you can't build a school when you know that there are population, there are migrations, out migrations in an area, and build a school. So we have to finish some of the processes like your mention of schools, and then agree with the community which place is central and what type of school we need. So we are not doing away. We are realistically saying we don't want to die to the nation to say we will do this by next year when we are aware that it will not happen.
Or you
One
shift.
of the things that also drive us is the resources. If we don't have adequate resources, we can't like say we build a school when we know we don't have money to build a school. So we have to work with government to say, indeed, the school has to be built, but then what is the realistic time frame that will enable us to do it? So to tell you the truth.
Or we are shifting goalposts because we were never going to meet the promises. They were empty to begin with.
No, not empty. So I explained to you that if you have to close the school, you have a whole year to negotiate with committees. Empty is something else. I don't know what empty will mean because for us, but it's in our interest to have proper infrastructure. Sometimes it helps me when I go to schools and find them in dilapidated buildings. So I have no interest in keeping dilapidated buildings. But I think on the other hand, I have to be honest and realistic and say this cannot be done now. But if wishes were horses, I would really rise and get all the schools fixed. That would be an ideal and a dream situation. But because it's a real world, I also have to deal with the realities that confront us. But pipe dream, I wish that dream could be realistic.
Minister, on this World Teachers' Day, with so many teachers with their back against the wall, overwhelmed for so many reasons, as we have discussed, what's your message of hope that things will get better, that there is work being done behind the scenes, that you see them, you hear them, and you recognize what they do?
Actually, teachers know very well. Yesterday was addressing SATU. I'll be going to address NOPTOSA. I'm going to a teachers' well-day on an ongoing basis. We engage with teachers. We share views with their leadership. We share views. And they know very well. We tell them what we are doing. They say what they think we can do more. This is a joint problem. It's not a problem alone. It is a problem for me to have a child riding on a teacher's back and playing monkey tricks in the class. It's very humiliating, it's very painful, and extremely embarrassing for us as government. So it's not something that you can sit back and say, we'll see to finish. It is our core responsibility because the well-being of teachers, all teachers are just at the center of the work that we do. And if we can't take care of them, it means we really don't know what is good for us. So we engage on an ongoing basis with them.
Angie Motshekga, appreciate your time, Minister of Basic Education, there on the line.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.